Okay, we're back streaming. This will be very different to my normal streams because I'm now streaming using OBS. I stopped using StreamYard, hence why there haven't been a lot of streams. I've kind of been just figuring out OBS. Not like it's that complicated, but because I'd never used it before, it was all kind of new. So yeah, it's all interesting though, all interesting. Just wait for people to join the live. Everyone's saying, hey, Urbans. Hello, Urbans. Hello, Urbans. How are you guys doing? It's good to be streaming, actually, because like I said, I was saying earlier that I started using OBS, so I don't use StreamYard anymore. The main reason, just to kind of tell you guys why, so initially why I use StreamYard to stream is because it's easier to add guests. And so I always wanted to be able to add guests easily. But a big issue with StreamYard is that the audio quality, it kind of messes up my audio quality. It kind of messes up my video quality too. Like now I'm streaming in 4K. I don't think you can stream 4K using StreamYard. And you can just customize things in OBS. The only drawback is that I can't really add guests. Yeah, at least I don't know how to. I think there's a way, but it's quite complicated, but I need to figure it out. But yeah, it's all about the stream quality going up. People saying Roadman doesn't sleep. I never sleep. I have a weird sleeping schedule, that's all. Also, to kind of tell you guys what's going on today. So today, what I'm going to be doing mainly is just reacting to 3 different videos. So it's kind of like a very chill, come back to streaming sort of thing. So we're going to look at this viral video by Brenda Hashtag talking about, dressing up for the summer and me reacting to it. I also wanted to react to my interview that I did with the BFC, and I'll go into the context of why. And then also someone who I know watches the channel, who I think all of you should subscribe to because he makes really good videos, but Dolce Jeans. I wanted to react to his video around gatekeeping because I thought he made some interesting points that I wanted to discuss. So yeah, that's essentially what's going on in this live. Very chill, just having a discussion, reacting to videos. Should be fun. Dave says, I'm here for it. I'm in the airport. This is perfect. Yeah, see, people are saying the live quality is A1. It's a lot better, but I just need to, like I said, figure out the whole streaming thing. And L saying it's almost my bedtime. I know, right? It's almost 1 a.m. in the UK. So yeah, if you need to go to bed, you need to go to bed. You can watch it back if you want to. So yeah. Luke says I love gatekeeping. Of course Luke says that. Of course Luke said he loves gate. Of course Luke said that. I'm not surprised at all. Not surprised. Yeah, Rachel says good time here in the US. I know, right? When I do these insanely late lives, I think that the Americans really appreciate it because, it's probably like early evening kind of time for you guys. So yeah. But anyway, that being said, I've kind of told you guys what to expect. So I think we should just jump straight into it, into the first video that I wanted to react to, which is essentially Brenda Hashtag talking about what she likes and dislikes about summer fashion and dressing up in the summer. Before I actually go on, what do you guys think about dressing in the summer? Like, do you guys have struggles wearing clothing in the summer, or you feel like your fashion sense is kind of downgraded when the temperature gets hot? What do you guys think about that topic? Micah says gatekeeping is so essential. It's how I'm still able to eat pancakes at Dash without people blowing up the spot. Micah, you're hilarious. Oh gosh, that's funny. I want to see what people are going to say about dressing up in summer. Al says all wool everything, just wear shorts. Rachel says, yes, I tend to dress much more casually in the summer. Day says, I'm trying to dress for comfort at all times. Luke hates the summer. Luke, what do you like? Manny, dressing in the summer is how you know who really knows how to dress. I wear my winter clothes all year and I don't care. Italian linen, very clingy, all black and baggy. I can't wear linen because I feel like when you wear linen, the sweat patches are outrageous. So someone like me that sweats a lot, it wouldn't be a good look. It definitely wouldn't be a great look. So yeah, great to see you guys' opinions on the matter. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through Brenda Hashtag's video, and I'm going to kind of give my thoughts as I play the video. But anyway, let's go straight into it.
You can't love summer and love fashion. Summer is for people who can't dress, in my opinion. I think summer is for hot people, conventionally hot people, who work for their summer body in winter. You get to show off your body and be hot.
That's so funny that Brenda Hashtag said that, you know, summer is for conventionally hot people. That's a very, very interesting take. Because I think, yeah, when we think of the summer, we associate the summer with, you know, people with nice bodies, like the whole beach bod thing. You barely wear any clothes because it's too hot. So the people that thrive, I guess, in the summer are the people that have those conventionally attractive, skinny, or for men, I guess, muscular bodies. So it's funny that she kind of said it's just a time to show off your body. I don't think that's the only I don't think that's the only thing that people do in the summer, but I get where she's going with that. I get it. A lot of people flex bodies in the summer.
But I feel like if you love fashion, you love fall, winter, and maybe spring. Every year around mid-August.
Wait, before we continue, is that true what she said? That if you love fashion, you mainly want to wear clothing in the fall, the spring? Is that a thing? Like, only the people that love fashion care about, you know, fall and spring and stuff. Is that true? Is that actually true? Only the fashionistas know about the fall, winter, and the spring. That's a very interesting take. Luke says, I don't want to wear anything in the summer. Yes, she's right. Yeah, Manny, I'm kind of with you. If you love fashion, you love every season. My wardrobe is a lot stronger in the fall, winter because I just have so much outerwear, like crazy Racones jackets or Damier Doma coats or Under Millimista coats. But with summer, to be honest, my summer style is so limited. That's probably something that I need to work on. My summer style is issey miyake, un plissé, and vibes, like absolute vibes. Just all I wear, just shorts. So I have nice shorts though. I have like some Comme des Garçons un plus shorts from Spring Summer 20. I have some Y3 shorts that are like cotton, different ones that are wool, some Yoji shorts. Those are cool. But really, my dress code for the summer is issey miyake and one of those shorts and just vibes. Or I might switch the vest, the issey miyake vest or t-shirt for maybe a football jersey or something that's sweat wicking. What I love about the issey miyake pleats is that the polyester that they use is very sweat wicking. It doesn't absorb sweat. So I really like it. But yeah, I definitely need to work on my summer wardrobe. It's not being able to layer and, you know, flex one of the coats. It's a problem.
I get depressed, and not because summer's almost over, because I want summer to be over. I have worn all my silk dresses, strappy heels, naked the row shoes, I've worn all my kitten heels and my ballerinas, have rotated all of my sunglasses. I am done. I want to accessorize. I'm wearing one ring and that is making me overstimulated and I feel like I'm sweating on my fingers. I want to be in like an oversized coat. I want to wear my boots.
See, Brenda Hashtag we're on the same wavelength. You want to wear your coats, you want to wear your boots. Like I'm thinking of my wardrobe now. Like I've got my Andy Willie boots. I've got my like other boots from Arquette. It's a lot of boots and like shoes that I just can't really wear. I mean, I can wear it, but my feet will just be very sweaty. I've even got like the rain boots from Rimbaud as well. So yeah, for me personally, I just think my wardrobe works a lot better when it comes to the fall winter months. But yeah, it's funny. She said, I get tired of just rotating my sunglasses. And then when I'm done rotating my sunglasses, what's next? I found that really funny. That's a really good point.
I want to be in my jeans, cozy sweater on. I want to wear a belt, tight things without feeling I'm sweating. I want to wear leather. I want to wear suede. I'm not a complete person in summer because I'm missing all of my stuff. And that doesn't mean my fashion makes me or anything. I just have fun styling things and I'm missing half of me in summer. I don't want to be in a t-shirt. I've had enough of my pleats please. You know, this meme, it's like someone in a puffer jacket. Oh, imagine a puffer jacket right now.
So Brenna Hashtag is in the same boat. She's just in her pleats please constantly. I genuinely think that the reason why a lot of people wear that in the summer, especially if you're like, I don't know, a fashion-y person, is because once again, it's sweat wicking. Like it's genuinely, I don't know many other fashion specific brands that make something as sweat wicking as the Issey Miyake pleats please or un plissé or whatever. I don't know any other brands that do that. That's why my summer style ends up being reserved for that or football jerseys or like sportswear in general, like NBA jerseys or whatever. I'm doing the whole high-low thing where I'm wearing Comme des Garçons shorts with Prada loafers and then like a Brooklyn Net NBA jersey because that's the only way to balance it and not sweat my life out. It's very, very interesting. I think I'm on the exact same wavelength as Brenda Hashtag, to be honest.
Yeah. It's someone in a puffer jacket and the caption is like, can't wait for it to be colder so I can really start dressing. That's me. I'm waiting. Seen enough of Brad Summer. I want to see some coats. I want to see some boots. I want to see people layering their outfits. Kim, there's people that are dying. Yes. Why are you scrolling on social media then? You can't.
That's so annoying. Like, obviously, there's terrible things going on in the world, but you know when people, every single thing is turned to, there's people that are dying, so you shouldn't care about fashion or even care about anything. It's a bit weird. Bit of a strange take. But yeah, it was very interesting to see her talking about, you know, her frustrations with dressing up in the summer. Even now she's wearing pleats please pants, it looks like. So just kind of being reserved to only being able to wear that. Finn says, I've been living in un plissé, literally sat in shorts right now from un plissé. I know, right? That's facts. That's facts. Mika says Fashion Roadman does not care about his European peers. I repeat, he does not care. Because I'm streaming so late. My apologies. I promise to be better next time. I'm just learning how to use OBS, and then also I had internet issues, so I had to delay the live slightly because of the internet issues. So yeah, my bad. Hopefully I can stream slightly earlier in the future to cater to everyone else. Rachel says the best thing about summer is long, loose, light dress. Men can wear that too. Aura says shorts are fine if you have an athletic build. Is it only for people with an athletic build? I'm sure that if you're really slim or skinny, I guess it also works. It's like shorts are fine. They're kind of cool. My bot is telling Luke to refrain from using foul language. You guys should ignore the bot because I'm still working on it. I don't think my bot understands what what foul language is. It's even telling me to give it permission to remove foul language. Why would I give it permission? You guys just ignore the bot for now, and we can move on. But what I wanted to focus on next is the video by Dolce Jeans. Now, before I actually watch the video, I will say that all of you should subscribe to Dolce Jeans because he makes very good content, very thought-provoking fashion content. It's really nice. I really like it. I do enjoy it. So yeah, definitely subscribe to his channel if you can. And what I'm going to react to is a video that he made about like gatekeeping. And what I like about it, he didn't necessarily say that gatekeeping is good or bad. He was more contrasting kind of like the pros and cons between each, which I really liked. It was quite nuanced, his take. So anyway, let's go through this video and see what he says and react to what he says.
In my opinion, gatekeeping is like barring access or access to information about a social circle, a social community, like a cultural community, or like niche topics within this social circle or community. So simple things like, oh, what's the name of that song? No. Where did you get that shirt from? No. What's the name of this movie? No. Hey, do you know where I can learn more about? No. You know, things like that. Gatekeeping over the past few years has garnered a lot of discourse on the internet, especially in the fashion scene, on whether or not you should gatekeep, whether or not you shouldn't gatekeep, what gatekeeping says about your character, and so on and so forth. I personally think that gatekeeping makes no sense in a lot of situations, but in certain situations you really should gatekeep because it's very good, effective, and it can actually foster growth within people. And I think gatekeeping, whether you do and whether you don't, has a lot to do with spoon feeding and mediocrity in fashion. And today I'll go into what I think those correlations are all about. So my name is Dolce Jeans. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for all the support on the channel as always. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Okay, yeah, so I'm just remembering he did divide this video into various sections, which I loved, because he was essentially saying, so there's this idea of like stupid gatekeeping, which is like gatekeeping where it doesn't really make sense. And then he had other sections saying where gatekeeping is more viable and it actually makes a lot more sense and it's actually almost needed, which I did like, because I have something to say about both of those sides and both of those opinions. But anyway, let's continue.
Okay, so when we look at examples of stupid gatekeeping, in my opinion, it's like me walking down the street wearing a shirt that says OSBAT on the front, like OSBATT, and somebody's like, hey, where'd you get that shirt? I think the font looks really cool. And I'm like, oh, I can't give that detail away, man. You gotta keep it on the low, man.
That's so funny. You know, there's a certain kind of fashion person that is always supposedly trying to keep things on the low, but what they're keeping on the low is not even low key. Like what they're keeping on the low is the most mainstream thing in the world. They're the kind of people that like someone on the street sees their Rick Owens Ramones and then people are like, oh, where did you get those? I kind of like those. They look like Converses with a thicker sole. And they're like, oh, I can't tell you, man. I don't want everyone wearing it. Like, bro, that's not even low key. Just tell the person what they want to know. Like, it's not even low key. You're doing way too much. And there are a lot of people in fashion that I encounter like that. They're like, oh, let's keep it on the low, bro. But it's like, it's already loud. You can't keep that on the low, even if you tried.
You know, trying to be like not a dickhead about it, but you're still a dickhead because you're not giving these people simple information. Because if that person were to go on Google and search up OSBAT right in front of me, they could probably figure out in the next 10 seconds that Years of Tears made the shirt. And you know, it's like they got the information just as easily as, you know, maybe not as easily actually, but almost just as easily as me saying it to them. So it was really pointless for me to gatekeep because this information is like on the very first page of Google. You know, if somebody just searches it up and it's like a visual thing that they can search. Same with like brands that just, you know, brand themselves in general, like Hellstar or something similar. Basically things that people can stumble upon like any way, shape or form, like a TikTok ad or a TikTok viral video or a meme or something like that. If you're trying to gatekeep something like that, bro, you have what a lot of people would say is like fragile individuality, which is one of the main arguments against gatekeeping nowadays. It's like, oh, if you gatekeep, you're not secure in yourself. You think that other people wearing the same clothes as you is going to make you any less individual, which is definitely a good shout. I hear it in certain cases, like gatekeeping a popular song when there's like Shazam exists or something like that. Stupid stuff like that. I remember when
That's funny. He said people gatekeep popular songs when Shazam exists. People are like, what song are you listening to? Like, oh, I gotta keep it on the low. I don't want everyone listening to my favorite artist. Like, I could literally just whip out Shazam and find out, exactly what I want to find out. But I think the more interesting part, because I think it's very obvious to know when gatekeeping is just silly and people just being annoying, like the whole, oh, I've got to keep it on the low, blah, blah, blah. But there are many use cases, which you'll get onto, which I have a lot to say about, where it does actually make sense to gatekeep. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, because a lot of people just hear gatekeeping and they think of like elitism and like, you're trying to block people's progress and stuff. But there are many, examples where it actually does make sense to gatekeep, and you probably should. Otherwise, you're not helping people.
When people try to gatekeep Bai, even though Bai was going viral like every week on TikTok for some other stupid meme, people are in the comments of the viral video about Bai saying that people should keep Bai on the low.
Wait, people thought they were keeping Bai on the low. People have been talking about Bai since like Avery Ginsburg was making YouTube videos and he used to talk about it, or like Fernando Rangel, or all those kind of content creators. Like, that's funny that people are like, oh, we got to keep Bai on the low because we got to keep the prices low. Like, Bai is not a low-key thing at all. There were whole tutorials on Grailed years ago. This is when I was like in uni, or like late sixth form. So I must have been like 17, 18 years old. Damn, that's like 8-9 years ago. That is not low-key at all. That's funny. People think they're keeping Bai on the low. That's jokes.
As if that makes any sense, right? Gatekeeping something like that is like very popular already before we even found out about it. Like the newer generation of Gen Z people, like there are videos on YouTube with tens of thousands of views on how to use Bai. Bai went viral every 2 seconds at one point, and people are like, no, keep it on the low. Like trying to gatekeep something like that people will willingly and freely just talk about on the internet doesn't make any sense in the slightest.
Yeah, so we've got into the healthy gatekeeping section of the video, which is where I was saying there are actually a lot of use cases where gatekeeping is actually very valid. So before we go into this section and we continue watching this, so something I want to say about healthy gatekeeping, or, just where gatekeeping doesn't make sense, like all these people saying, oh, we're going to keep Bai on the low and all that sort of stuff, is I always want to help people. If I can give people information, I would absolutely love to, even though it might have taken me so much time to gain a certain amount of information, or so much research that I had to do to gain this information. I don't mind giving it to someone. My issue is sometimes the entitlement that people have is where you don't want to give them any of the information, because I've had situations where someone will DM me on Instagram and I don't respond immediately, which is very highly unlikely because I get hundreds of messages a day, which I definitely don't respond to because I've only got so much time in a day. But I eventually try to get to all my messages. Eventually, I'll get there someday. And if I don't respond to these people in like 2 hours, they get mad. So when I get to responding to some of these Instagram DMs, it'll literally just be like a thread of like, oh, please can you tell me about this? And then followed by, oh, you're an idiot. You think you're all that. You think you're famous. You're acting brand new, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, so now I'm just not going to give you this information. Now you're just never going to get that information. So I think it's kind of strange when people want something from you for free, information that, I've garnered over the years. And instead of just being patient and waiting for me to actually give them the information, they get really angry and actually have like throw a fit at me because I don't give them the information when they want it or within the time frame that they need it. So yeah, that's a situation where gatekeeping is very, very much justified.
Okay, now we're gonna get into like gatekeeping and how it relates to spoon feeding and mediocrity. So let's say a brand like Rick Owens, right, that has decades of history, and there's so much stuff to just find out about Rick Owens everywhere, like on the website where they put a lot of articles and interviews with Rick, through books, magazines, interviews everywhere on YouTube. You can just scour and scour and scour the internet and learn. It takes so much time to learn about these brands. You can spend hours a day learning about Rick Owens and compiling all this information. Maybe you write it down, maybe you just memorize it, maybe you put it in like a internet folder, like a YouTube playlist or something, and you keep all of this information. You can go on the internet and like just give it all for free, which is like cool, right? But I also think that this kind of does contribute to spoon feeding. I've posted like promotional TikToks on my videos on the internet, and like I've been like, oh, this is like a slightly longer video. It's like 20 minutes plus. And people are like, oh yes, I love video essays. I love sitting down and just watching video essays. Like video essays are cool. And of course, a lot of people do learn like that, but I think a lot of people just sit down and consume without actually like doing any supplementary research or any quick education on the side that's supposed to.
Let me stop there. That's facts. So that was a really good point that he made in terms of a lot of people now don't want to do any research. I'll give you a good example. Like when I started my TikTok, there were quite a lot of people who used to watch my YouTube channel. And so when I made a TikTok, a lot of them found it and were like, oh, like, I'm so happy that you made a TikTok because I used to watch your YouTube channel. But then when I started getting into TikTok, I didn't have the attention span to watch YouTube videos anymore. So I lose attention if I watch anything longer than, 2 minutes. And it's just like, I don't know how you can learn anything about anything if that's the way that you consume information. Like the only way. That's crazy. Like reading books obviously is the longest form and it's probably where you go deep and you actually start doing a deep dive. The internet is very deep. You can find so many things on the internet. You can just scour the internet and just go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And supplement that with books and stuff. But you're not going to do that unless you at least have the attention span to watch a 20-minute, 30-minute YouTube video. So I think the next generation, they might not be particularly bright. I can see that happening because if their attention span is not even enough to watch a 20-minute video, I fear for the future generations, honestly. There is only so much information you can get from TikToks. It's horrible. Like, how can you learn anything substantial if all you do is try to look for the shortest form of, gaining the information? And even going back to what Dolce Jeans was saying, which is a very strong point, is that even the people that love the video essays, the people that, can watch a 20 to 30 minute YouTube video, they don't even go and look at anything else to supplement that information or to even critique what they are listening to or what they're watching, or, to have a deeper understanding or to bring context into what they're watching before they watch it. So they just watch that video essay, take everything for face value and as fact, even though a lot of it might not be, or a lot of it might be subjective opinions, not necessarily facts. So you have to kind of research more about that thing and then draw your own conclusions. But obviously you can use that video essay as part of the process of coming to your own conclusion about a topic. But yeah, it's a big issue I've seen in fashion right now. But anyway, let's continue because Dolce Jeans is spitting. He's spitting.
Supposed to help reinforce this knowledge that they learned in the video essay. Now, pause. I'm not trying to be a buzzkill because some people really just want to watch a quick, or not even a quick, just a really fun 1 hour video about something they've never heard about and it's not that serious for them. But if you're somebody that takes fashion really seriously, or a certain brand, you say you're a big fan of a brand, but like you only listen to like video essays and TikTok reviews about this brand, and you don't actually do any reading for yourself about like the brand or the person who made the brand or the designer who works for the brand now, it's like you're just being spoon-fed information without actually having any real good foundational ideas or information for yourself to form actually good sensible opinions. And when you get a lot of your information from just video essays and TikToks, you're more you're more susceptible to mistakes by human error, people giving you false information, and you have all of these random fact bubbles that just float around in your brain without understanding like where some of this information comes from, what it leads to, what it relates to, and why it's important and why it matters to know. So spoon feeding, being spoon fed all this information at once, just creates laziness, because then you don't know how to just go out and get information on your own. You don't know how to really search and read up on your own. It just fosters not even reading, because anybody can sit down for an hour and stare at a screen, right?
Facts. Oh, Dolce spitting. So he's just said that, the issue with this, discourse around gatekeeping is that if you just keep spoon feeding people information, then they don't ever go and seek the information for themselves. And they don't actually take the time to learn about anything substantially. And so sometimes gatekeeping makes sense, because sometimes it's better for the person if you actually tell them, no, go and seek your own understanding of the thing. Let me give you some recommendations to read, but I'm not just going to tell you the exact answer for the thing that you want. That way you have to go on your own journey of understanding and learning, but then you get the full context. Because it's like, for example, I have so many hot takes, but it's based on so much research. So for example, I can say a hot take, like, I'll give you an example of like why sometimes you have to gatekeep. So I remember one time I said a hot take where I said that like Christian Dior is overrated. And I remember someone saying, oh, I used to love your channel, but I stopped watching it because I just think now you just do hot takes because you're trying to, be polarizing or whatever. And I was just thinking to myself, like, first of all, overrated just means that someone is held to a higher esteem than, let's say, they deserve or that they are warranted. And people hold Christian Dior in such a high regard, but you talk about the new look and then you realize that it's not really a new look because Cristóbal Balenciaga did that. And that's literally why Christian Dior was obsessed with Cristóbal Balenciaga, because he knew that he was better than him. You think of the likes of Yves Saint Laurent, who, when Yves Saint Laurent was working for Christian Dior, he was so good that people almost started to look away from Christian Dior himself and just be obsessed with what Yves Saint Laurent was doing. They started talking about Yves Saint Laurent like some crazy protege. It even got to the point where Christian Dior was just like, you know what, I don't think like Yves Saint Laurent because he's an absolute genius. So I'm just going to let him do his own thing. I'm not going to micromanage him. Then it got to the point where Christian Dior became so hands-off that Yves Saint Laurent basically just took over the whole thing. And of course, when Christian Dior unfortunately passed, he did then actually fully take over. So if you just look at across his career, the ideas aren't super original. The timing was right. And I've said this in a video before, and I'll say it again, that in fashion, some fashion designers, not all, but I do think it's definitely the case with someone like a Christian Dior, is sometimes it can be right place, right time. It could be, the fact that the World War had just, ended and people were yearning for a certain type of fashion that wasn't around at the time. And so because people are yearning for that, making clothing where there's this level of decadence and a return to clothing when people want rationing fabrics and stuff like that, people are going to love that because there's a nostalgia factor. But if we're talking about Christian Dior as a designer, Christian Dior was not out here sewing with his hands like a Alexander McQueen. Like, to me, Alexander McQueen is a way better designer than Christian Dior. And so when I say Christian Dior is overrated, it's based in like a deep understanding of fashion history and knowing and contrasting him to the other designers of his time and other greats, and then seeing, okay, compared to all these people that your name is spoken with, you're not necessarily on the level of these people, right? But because people, and going back to the spoon-fed thing and the whole gatekeeping thing, the only reason why I will say something like Christian Dior is overrated and people will just be offended by that is because they don't really do any research. And apart from not doing any research, they haven't even taken the time to actually consider, why would he say that? What's his opinion on that? Is there any evidence to back up what he's saying? Like, let me dig deeper. Let me kind of understand where he's coming from. Because they are so, I'll just put it this way. They so haven't done any fashion research, or they're just so in the point of only being spoon-fed information and not seeking anything for themselves, that they've been told when they first got into fashion that Christian Dior is larger than life. And so someone saying that Christian Dior could possibly be overrated absolutely decimates their worldview and their point of view on fashion, that they can't even begin to understand why anyone would even say that. So then they just choke it as, oh, you're trying to be polarizing. And so that's why sometimes you can't spoon feed people information like, oh, Christian Dior is a great designer, because then people will say that Christian Dior is a great designer but not know why. And so they just go through their lives just saying that Christian Dior is like the best thing since sliced bread. They don't even know why. They don't even know the innovation that he did. They don't even know his silhouettes. They don't even know what Dior bar suit looks like because they haven't been to a museum and seen it in person. So there are all these issues that comes from spoon feeding people information. And I do think there are certain situations where instead of giving people the information, you have to tell them books to read and exhibitions to go to, museums to visit, and actually get them to learn that way. And that's the only way that they can learn more effectively than just telling them very specific information that they ask for.
This is like reduced attention spans. Even though like sitting down and watching a 30-minute video essay is a lot longer than a lot of people nowadays can do, I still think that when you subject yourself to like being spoon-fed over and over again every day, it's like you don't know how to search. And this basically doesn't foster any critical thinking skills in people, which in turn leads to mediocrity, which is when everybody's just saying random fact bubbles that they can memorize. You can memorize this, you can memorize that, but how much of understanding do you actually know about a brand and a brand's philosophy and why they made the clothes the way they make it, or why this collection was like that compared to this collection, and what's different from the first collection to the one now, other than visually? I think this ties into mediocrity, because then nobody will actually know how to do good research and get the real valuable information that is out there, which will lead to a whole bunch of mediocre opinions and mediocre figures and mediocre discourse in the industry, just saying anything to say anything, to say something, to have an opinion. And where gatekeeping comes back into this is that I feel like if you gatekeep information like that, that's really valuable, that you really have to search hard for, you might seem like a dickhead to whoever you're gatekeeping it to or from. But this will in turn probably make them go find it for themselves, just like how you had to. And it also kind of slightly ties into shame as well, when it's like somebody says something that's blatantly wrong and it's like you correct them with like hardcore information. That's the type of stuff that makes people want to be like, oh man, like I got myself wrong, I can't do it again. But that's like a very, very small, specific niche type of case. So don't pay too much attention to that. But I feel like when people get spoon-fed information every day on the internet, they just don't go out and find anything for themselves, which is why we keep on seeing things being repeated as new. Because when you're constantly being spoon-fed things on a screen, you don't really have the chance to go find something for yourself that you really resonate with. It's just a whole bunch of things being thrown at you at once. Which is like you like everything that you're seeing, but you can't really create anything specific that's special and new, because it's just a whole bunch of stuff that's being thrown at you at once. And gatekeeping would essentially dial back on that, force people to go find something that they actually like, force people to read more, force people to build critical thinking skills, and force people to become better, I want to say like mini journalists, or better devotees to whatever they're devoted to. And this doesn't work well with the stupid pandemic that's going on right now. I think it's a stupid pandemic, where being able to express your
This man said it's a stupid pandemic. I love that phrase. A stupid pandemic. Also, someone in the comments is saying that you don't need to be able to sew to be a good designer. So going back to Christian Dior, why I say Christian Dior is overrated. once again, I'm not saying he's not a good designer. I'm just saying he's overrated. I think sometimes people mix up what overrated actually means. You can say someone is overrated and also say that they're also really good at something. So when it comes to Christian Dior is mentioned with all the greats, like as one of the greatest fashion designers of. If you look at lists of greatest fashion designers of the 20th century, Christian Dior's name is going to probably be in every single one of those, right? Now, if we're talking about the best of the best designers, to be honest, they have to have everything. So if we're talking about the best of the best of the best, they have to have creative ideas. They have to have innovated in fashion. They have to have their own signature silhouettes. They have to be able to sew. They have to be able to make patterns. That's what separates like really good from like really, really good. That's what separates greatest of all time or the best that we've ever seen fashion designers from, oh, they're really, really good. And so when you think of Christian Dior, there's so many things I can point at that he can't do. Whereas there are other greats that I can't point at, oh, they can't do this or they can't do that or they can't do this or they can't do that. And so that's where you look at the John Gallianos and the Alexander McQueens and the Cristobal Balenciagas. Those are the ones that are, to me, are the best of the best of the best, right? So there's just a clear difference. There's a clear level difference. There's like a level gap, clearly. So there's nothing wrong with, not being able to necessarily sew or pattern make as a designer. But if we're going to talk about the greatest of all time, the greatest designers we've ever seen, then I don't know how Christian Dior is even anywhere near that list, to be honest. So that's the point I'm making.
Express yourself critically because of things that you actually know and deduced well because of what you're reading and what you're figuring out on the internet is a lot less value than somebody just looking at something and just being like, oh, bad, good, this sucks. You're stupid for thinking that this doesn't suck. You know what I mean? And it's not cute to be critical anymore because everybody's being spoon-fed and it's already like all the critical thinking is done for you by, content creators and people who actually read. So all you get to do is just regurgitate what they said on the internet, and you're right because Ryan Finn said it or something, like Mina Lay said it or something. And of course, these people are also opinionated, but their opinions are very strongly backed by research. Maybe more so Ryan Finn than Mina Lay. But when they're very backed by research, you get to just ride the coattails of what these people are saying because, oh, they said it, so it must be right. But where do you get your understanding from? Like, what reading have you done to come to your conclusions other than just hearing a smart person say it? And people like that give you a lot for free. And I think as much as content creation is like a boom now and everybody wants to be, it's like that one tweet where it's like everybody's obsessed with being a glamorous philosopher, but I think a lot of y'all are stupid. I think as much as that's like a big thing now and I'm the one that's doing it in front of this camera as well, so I can't really talk, I think that is leading to a lot of people getting in front of cameras and being mediocre without reading. I may be catching out straight here. I don't think I am though.
He said I may be catching a stray. That's funny. But it's so true. What he said about, Ryan Finn or, any other content creator that makes really, really good content and is obviously very knowledgeable and well researched on their opinions. But at the end of the day, a lot of fashion is still subjective, right? And so you shouldn't take, unless it's like something really factual, it's like factual reporting, you shouldn't take someone's opinion as law. You should kind of take that opinion and take the information that comes from that opinion and then do your own reading, I guess, and research if you have the time, and then formulate your own opinion from that. And so that's just such a good point. It's kind of like he said it's not cute to be critical anymore. That's definitely true. I think that even on YouTube as a platform, right? I think a big reason why my channel is not as big is because I don't do the whole polarizing for the sake of polarizing. I might say things that people find polarizing or crazy, but I'm not doing it for the effect of shock factor or whatever. I'm just saying my actual opinions, right? But I think that a lot of YouTubers who do the shock value thing and aren't really critical, they're just, either praise everything and make everything seem like it's the best thing since sliced bread and don't really have any critical takes on fashion at all, or they just completely bash things, and negativity breeds negativity, and that's why a lot of people just grow on being negative. And I just don't necessarily want to do that, because I always want to talk about things in a deeper way. And so it's sad that kind of the social media platforms reward being inflammatory. It really, really is sad that that's the case. But it's true. It's true. I definitely agree with what Dolce Jeans was saying.
I think at the most, if you're gonna give somebody a tidbit of information, give them the entire source and be like, yo, you have to read this whole thing to understand what I just said. To let people like really read more. And art is supposed to, like, fashion is not really an art, it's more of like an applied art. Because if it was an art, it wouldn't look like, the runways would look so much different on a larger scale. But that's a whole different conversation. That's neither here or there. But I think art is beautiful because so many people can have different interpretations of it, because of how we all perceive things differently and how different critical thinking skills produce different outcomes. And humans generally, we're all different, so we'll all have different critiques. But when you have a whole bunch of people being able to say something about fashion is bad, or something about fashion is good, or slay, buzzword, 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 and you're not able to give like a critical breakdown of it. I'm not saying everybody should be a scholar giving me a whole essay about why this collection is bad or not. But when nobody's doing that, it's a problem. And I think that's where we're headed. I think fashion is becoming more and more vain by the year because of, even more democratization and even more capitalism. Big conglomerates pushing brands to be more commercial than artistic, so it lessens appreciation for design.
What he's saying is so true. It's the same point I was making earlier about, like, people are rewarded for just being mindlessly negative. I'll give you a good example, right? When I review red carpet events, so when I reviewed like the Met Gala, I just title it Met Gala Review because I know I'm going to talk with a bit more nuance, right? But if I made a video that was titled The Trashiest Looks at the Met Gala 2024, that would have gotten views out of the wazoo. And I know this because I've been on YouTube long enough to know what works and what doesn't. I deliberately make videos sometimes I know there won't be that much interest, because at the end of the day, it interests me. And the reason why I got into making YouTube videos in the first place was because at the time, I didn't really see anyone on YouTube analyzing fashion. And so I wanted to analyze fashion around, topics, ideas, brands that I find interesting. So I would get burnt out, I feel like, if I just start chasing views mindlessly and just making those kind of videos just because I know it gets loads of views and for no other reason other than that. So it's sad, because what then happens is people that come into this with the wrong intentions are going to do that, because their main goal and the main thing that they're trying to do is they're trying to get famous or they're trying to get big. And so that's what they do. And it's really sad. It's so sad that like fashion is, moving towards that direction. I think it's not a good thing in terms of like the way fashion discourse is going to be happening 20, 30 years from now.
Designers like J.W. Anderson, who have a more artistic approach to things, The appreciation for critical thinking and critical theory in fashion, and actually reading and understanding what's good and what's not, and like formulating your own opinions, would help fashion from the consumer all the way up to the creator. Because I think fashion is like, it's the art form with the biggest gap between the creator and consumer, I feel like by far, I think, in terms of like know-how and knowledge of what's actually going on and what's like supposed to be classified as good and classified as bad, like good design, bad design, good quality, bad quality, all of that. But I think if more people were to like educate themselves without somebody else just easily doing it for them, then we could actually have a lot more of a critical, intelligent audience. And I think the mediocrity would at least slow down. But I think now, especially with the younger kids, it's becoming a lot of good, valuable information and good, valuable aspects of fashion and fashion understanding and engaging with fashion is being lost to being critical, just not being popular, and the prioritization of things looking cool over things actually having meaning. again, not to be a buzzkill saying that everything should be super deep and like, no, there's obviously a time for fun fashion. That's always been a thing, but there has to be some type of pushback, because everything can't just be fun, because some people actually value having a resonation with their actual clothes that they wear because of the meaning behind it. But if nobody has meaning behind their clothes, along with people who can't literally can't find the meaning behind clothes because they don't know how to like read between the lines, that they don't have the critical thinking skills because they don't read at all, I think we're in a bad spot in the future. We're in a bad spot now too, because again, there's really a stupid pandemic. Like, everybody just... But yeah, honestly, I think more gatekeeping would be healthy. Some people might bear the brunt of backlash about, oh, you're such a snobbish elitist. I don't think it's being elitist. I think it's actually just encouraging people to like, yo, go find this information for yourself. Don't let me just tell you everything on the internet. Don't let this person, don't let Fashion Roadman or Ryan Finn or Bliss Foster or Outlet Mode or The Casual or The Education or Understitch just tell you everything that there is to know about a designer. Go buy a book about the designer. Go buy a book about this time period of fashion or that time period or this brand or that brand. Just buy a book. Like, these books aren't even that long to read or hard to read. They're not using like crazy intelligent jargon or anything. Just go read something. But enough yapping. That's all I had to say. Thank you so much for watching. In my
So yeah, great video, as you guys have seen. So definitely subscribe to Dolce Jeans. Like I said, he makes really good videos, very thought-provoking, opens up good discussions as well. But yeah, I just agree with what he was saying, you know, that there is actually this assumption that if you're not giving someone information, you're an elitist automatically. But I think kind of what he was saying, which I agree with, is this idea that, no, I actually just want you to kind of seek the information for yourself and learn yourself. And that doesn't mean that when people ask me things, I don't tell them. I actually do both. So if someone asks me, how I do it is, if someone asks me like on Instagram, oh, what do you think about this designer? Or what do you think about, you know, this person? Or what did you think about this collection that this designer did? I'll tell them what I think, and then I'll be like, this is what I think. You can read this to learn more about it if you're interested. That's normally how I would phrase it. Or there's this book about this exact thing if you're interested. There's a documentary on this if you're interested. So if I know there's a resource that could be read or watched or listened to, like a podcast episode, I'll always push the person, not force them, obviously, but kind of give them the nugget to pursue the information further if they so wish. So I try not to just do the, I'm not telling you go and read a book, because obviously that's going to come across as really rude and low-key mean. So I try to do both. But I do agree with the sentiment that, you know, people just sometimes need to just seek the information from themselves rather than expecting someone else to do like the heavy lifting and then them to just get a revised version, because you're not even really getting the full context. It's like every time I summarize a book, you're missing the context. Even on Patreon, when I do like fashion book club episodes, I'm still summarizing. There's so much stuff I leave out, even though I'm reviewing a book chapter by chapter. I'm still leaving out so much information. And so you just don't get the full context. You really don't. There's so much stuff you miss out on when you don't do that. But not saying that everyone needs to be like a damn near fashion journalist in fashion or whatever. But I do think that, you know, there's a lot of positive things that can come out of having better discourse online in fashion. And not to say there are places where there's amazing discourse. There's so many forums, platforms. I've seen some really good forums on Reddit, for example. I will say that my Discord, we have really good fashion chats and fashion conversations. We even had an audio conversation not too long ago where we really talked about fashion for hours. So there's so many content creators that have garnered a really good community, like Tuba, Avalon, like these kind of content creators, and they've built like a really engaged audience where there's really good fashion discourse. But I think outside of these small, tiny corners of fashion on the internet, I think that in general, if we encourage more people to do more research, I think that things will improve. So yeah, great video once again. And it was great to share my thoughts on it. Before I move on to the last bit of the live, which is me reacting to the interview I did with the BFC, what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on what we've just watched and the points I've just made? Oral Health says, I would provide the information so that others can remix, reformulate, and reimagine it. Leo says audiobooks exist, already scraping the barrel at this point. Leo says people hate when you tell them to go read books, but what if they really need to? Damn. Food for thought. Rue Gob, I love that name, Rue Gob. I wonder how many people then read the article, book, watch the doc. I don't really know. I mean, I wouldn't know, because sometimes they'll get back to you, sometimes they won't. But there are some people, though, that I give them the information, then I give them the recommendation of the book, the documentary, the podcast episode, the article, whatever it is. And then they get back to me like, oh, I watched what you told me to, potentially read or whatever, and this is what I learned, and this is my understanding of it. And it happens all the time. Like, there are so many people that have read How Luxury Lost Its Luster because I'm always talking about it, which is a good thing, because I don't want people just to take my words as law. Like, if you read the book, learn about it yourself. Don't even take Dana Thomas's words as law. Do your own research. We've seen things recently, for example, with the labor laws that Dior and Armani have been, breaking and all this kind of thing. So you can start to see these things and actually learn for yourself that, oh, okay, what was said in this book actually makes sense. It's true. Micah says, I would hate to have to respond to how many DMs the Fashion Roadmap receives. Electra Man says, I think if you're not actively starting as business or major project in fashion, is there much need to do a ton of reading? Because at this stage, it's just a hobby. It's not that deep. Yeah, so most of the people I'm talking about, I'm not talking about the everyday person that just kind of wants to learn more about fashion and kind of just have more discussions around fashion. The people I'm talking about are the people on Twitter that are super, super opinionated and, talk about or tweet like their opinions are law, or even a lot of content creators on TikTok or YouTube. Less so YouTube. I think that a lot of the YouTubers I see are way more well-researched than on TikTok. No shade. So on YouTube, you have people like Tuba Avalon, you have people like Bliss Foster, you have people like Understitch, you have people like Fashion Lover 4. These are people that are actually well researched on fashion. TikTok, outside of Ryan Finn, it's not too many people, to be honest. And so it's especially more important if you're making fashion content that you're not just spouting fashion hot takes without any research backing, or if you're, actively doing fashion projects and stuff and not really considering these things on a deeper level. But for the day-to-day person, it's obviously not necessary. At the end of the day, it's just a hobby. You're just trying to learn things about fashion, just maybe be entertained by learning different designers' stories and learning different nuggets about fashion history. So yeah, it's not necessary in all cases, but there are many cases where it definitely is necessary. The guy I met on Twitter who said I designed from the wrong place, but also doesn't want to make his own garment patterns. And that's another thing too, because even me, like I'm a journalist, but I guess because a lot of people find my content like recently, or they don't know what my background is, and they don't know that I've actually been a pattern maker myself, and I've made garments working for brands. So even my journalistic perspective also comes from an understanding of actually knowing how clothes are made. So yeah, that's another thing too. Yeah, Fashion Lover 4 does need to come back. I miss Fashion Lover 4 on the YouTube airwaves. I definitely miss that. Micah's acting Hollywood today. Day says, when's the next fashion mag? I'm working on it. Also, Day, I saw you saying earlier that one day you're going to hop in the live. You're always welcome to jump into one of the live stream episodes, just so you know. Rugob says, the internet killed print journalism. I used to be into journalism. I interned at Vogue once. I don't think magazines would hold the same authority over fashion. Okay, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. That's definitely true. Luke says Fashion Lover 4 was smart and hot. Get your mind out of the gutter, Luke. Luke is too funny. Anyway, going on to the last part of the stream. So I wanted to react to an interview I did for the British Fashion Council. I did this with Tora North, who I've been a fan of since, really long time. I knew about Tora North from when I was in about secondary school times. I was maybe like 15, 16, 17, around that time, like almost 10 years ago. And she used to be on all those like pages like Hype Fits and like all those fits, because she always had like a really interesting way of dressing. And so I've known about her for years. Then obviously over time I got to meet her, and she's really, really cool. I think now she works at High Snobiety. And so she was essentially interviewing me for the British Fashion Council. Why I really wanted to talk about this interview actually is because I don't remember what I actually said. So I wanted to react to it to see if I actually agree with my own opinions from back then, because we filmed this such a long time ago, like months and months and months ago. I almost forgot about it because, most of these things, they like film it and then it doesn't come out until like a year later. So even when it came out, I was like, oh yeah, damn, I did do this. It came out such a long time ago. So it'll be good to see what I said and to see if like I still think that way, or I still have those opinions. But it was essentially around kind of like being a fashion journalist, but also being a YouTuber, and if fashion respects YouTubers or online creators. So anyway, let's get straight into it and let's see what I was talking about in this interview. Hi, my name is Odumayo Ojo. I'm a freelance fashion journalist and content creator.
And my name is Tora Northman. I currently work at High Snobiety as the senior social media manager, and I also do content creation on the side. So what about like with creating content on YouTube, how did you feel, like obviously when you first started it, I bet it was kind of tricky to like find your community versus now. What's the evolution been like?
Yeah, I think because I went into making YouTube content with this understanding that this content doesn't exist, so there might not even be an audience for it.
Right.
So I guess my motivations for doing it was just, if I get 10 views and there's 10 people that are really interested, that's really cool. I didn't expect it to like go to where it went to. So to be honest, I think that audience... This is so true. So to add context to what I just said in terms of like when I was starting YouTube fashion, I didn't really know if there would be an audience for it. It's so true, because when I started my channel, and before this channel that you're actually watching this on, I had a different channel, and then I kind of rebranded it into the Fashion Archive, and then it later became Fashion Roadman, right? But when I initially started, especially from the first channel, the kind of content I make actually did not exist. Like, there were people who I used to follow who I thought made really good content, like Sanjeev, like Magnus Ronning, like Fernando Rangel. I'm trying to think of who else. Avery Ginsberg in the earlier days. Kyron Warwick, who I still watch today. But a lot of their content was more predicated on like styling, having a fashion brand, all that sort of stuff. I was more theoretical with the way I thought about fashion. So I was more into reading fashion critics. Like, I used to read Tim Blanks and Kathy Horan and, you know, all these journalists, Vanessa Friedman, all these people. And so I was like, I watch all these YouTubers on YouTube. Why is it that no one kind of does what Tim Blanks does for all these magazines like Fantastic Man, or now what he does at BOF? Why is it that no one does that but on YouTube? Why is it that when people make fashion content, it's either styling things or it's like vlogs? Like, at the time, it was really popular to go to Supreme drops or to do those kind of things. And it always confused me. Like, I thought maybe it was like there was something wrong with I don't know, like maybe people just didn't think it would work or whatever. And so the only time that I saw that kind of content was really Show Studio. I think Show Studio was the only platform on YouTube where you could actually go and it's a panel. Back then it was Lou Stoppard. You'd have people like Finn McTaggart, and they would actually talk about the runway shows and have these panels with industry experts, and you would actually feel like you were learning about the runway shows themselves and about the stories behind the designers' work and what they did. And then, of course, even kind of like Show Studio time, before Show Studio, there was also Style.com. Style.com, where you would have Tim Blanks, who would go to the runway shows, and they used to post this on YouTube. Like, you can find all this stuff on YouTube. Luke is saying in the comments, Mima Veglizio, she was amazing on Show Studio, by the way. And so with Style.com, Tim Blanks would go, he would analyze the show, he would also interview people that were at the show. But to be honest, I just used to watch it to see what Tim Blanks would say, because when they interview people at shows, and it kind of reminds me of kind of what Loic Prigent does now, where I love his videos, but sometimes when I love Loic Prigent's videos, because Loic Prigent will interview the designer, and he's a journalist, so he'll get the information from the designer, and then the information is really key. Like, he'll get nuggets of information that you can't find otherwise. But then the people that he interviews, like, what did you think of the show? Great, fantastic, bubbly, awesome. And they just say a whole bunch of fluff. And that was the same issue that I had with Style.com at the time, when they would interview anyone other than Tim Blanks. It would just be like, what did you think of the collection? Oh my God, it was sensational. I mean, this is fashion at its peak. I mean, this is fashion that is moving and shaking, that's dancing and jumping. And it's like, so what? So like, what am I supposed to learn from that? But yeah, so kind of going back to what I was saying, Style.com, Show Studio, those were the only two. So at the time when I made my video, I had my videos and I made my channel, I had absolutely no idea where it would go. I had no idea if there was an audience for it. I just wanted to do it because I watched so much fashion YouTube, and I just wanted to talk about my interest on YouTube because I watch other people's interests on YouTube, and I just thought it made a lot of sense at the time. So that's why, going back to this BFC interview, I was like, yeah, I didn't know if there would be an audience. If there were literally 10 people who watched my videos and, you know, had something interesting to comment, I would be happy, because genuinely I had no idea if there was even an audience for that. Audience has kind of just created itself. I think fashion in general is more popular now.
I think now more than ever, people are actually more interested in runway shows and brands that people never talked about before. When I started my channel, Schiaparelli, for example, was like no one talked about it unless you're into fashion history.
Totally.
But now you have, designers like Daniel Roseberry bringing it back. So,
oh my God. So this is how I know that discourse online has changed. Like the audience, or let's say there's just a bigger audience for this kind of content now, like fashion essays, fashion analysis, blah, blah, blah. When I made my channel, people didn't even know that there was a difference between Martin Margiela and Maison Margiela. Like, people used to say, they used to refer to Martin as Maison Margiela because they didn't even know that Maison meant like house of Margiela. Like, when you say Maison Margiela, that's House of Margiela. That was how new the audience for this kind of content was when I first started making content. If you talked about designers like Schiaparelli, people had no idea what I was talking about. I remember early days, I used to do live streams where I'll talk about like different designers historically that have done really interesting things, and people just didn't know what I was talking about. Whereas I feel like now, if I do a Schiaparelli stream, everyone knows what I'm talking about. If I do Cristobal Balenciaga stream, everyone knows what I'm talking about. So this is how I know for a fact that the fashion discourse online has changed drastically. It's like so different. So different.
I think actually, in general, people are having more conversations about fashion. So I think the timing, even though I didn't plan it that way, was kind of perfect.
Yeah, you came into it right when it needed to be done. Do you feel like it was well received within the fashion community, like being on YouTube and doing social media?
Not at first, no.
Yeah.
I think that it wasn't taken seriously. I think there's this big separation between like real journalists and then YouTubers.
1000%.
So it was this thing where, this guy's like cool, but he's not like a real journalist. He's not doing real journalism type of thing. And there was a lot of gatekeepy perspectives around it.
Yeah.
Which is funny because from where I was sitting, I was like, well, there is no space for me in the fashion industry. At the time we had, Alexandra Schulman and her British Vogue and that picture that came out at the time, and everyone was white. So clearly there was no space for me in like the fashion journalism realm. So I had to create my own space in a way. So that perspective of, it's not real journalism at first is kind of funny because now every single traditional journalist I see, they all have social media platforms now. They've all realized that, first of all, the pay isn't great. And secondly, it's actually a good idea to make your own audience. So it's funny how they've gone from being like, this is weird, this is strange, these people aren't doing real journalism, to following the same blueprint that we created. It's kind of funny.
1000%.
So that's kind of like a hot take that I dropped in there. But what I was essentially saying is that I remember, and it's not even I remember, this, even till now, this still happens. As recently as last year, I went to this fashion event and I went with like some highly esteemed journalists. I won't say their names, obviously, because I'm not trying to get anyone into trouble. This is not like a drama channel or whatever. But I was just there and we went for dinner, and all these journalists started complaining about the fact that, I hate that influencers are taking over and influencers are, at the front seats of the shows. And I just hate where fashion has gone. And like, these designers are so ungrateful. I covered their brand when they were small brands, and now that they're too big for their boots, they don't put us on the front row anymore. They're putting these mindless influencers, which I agree with them in a sense. But then I think one time I was at dinner and I don't think the person actually realized I was there. And they started mentioning like names of people that are at front rows at shows and why they don't like it. And they mentioned my name, they mentioned Bliss Foster's name, they mentioned Haute Le Mode's name. And I was just thinking to myself, like, first of all, this journalist that is talking, if if my YouTube channel disappeared today and we just said, okay, let's compare writing resumes. I've written for the Business of Fashion. I worked there for 9 months. I've written for Vogue Runway. I've written for GQ. This person doesn't even have the writing credentials that I have. And they're trying to be shady and refer to me as, oh, he's just a mindless YouTuber and he gets to go at the front row of shows and I don't. Like, fashion is going downhill. And I was so confused because I was like, even as a writer, you're not even where I am as a writer, not to talk of the content stuff. And I think that the bigger point I'm making is that I genuinely think that a lot of journalists, there's like a personal inadequacy that they felt because they felt like their opinions were not less valid, but it didn't get as much visibility as the time when social media didn't exist and everyone had to buy the magazine to get the opinion. And so they're kind of butthurt that the realm has just expanded. And I think that they're just not smart, because if they were smart, they would have started social media platforms or YouTube platforms like me, and they would be more successful than me because they have more knowledge than me. Like, can you imagine? And by the way, my favorite journalists weren't the people saying this. It was other journalists that I won't mention, but it wasn't, I don't know, Rachel Tasjian or Kathy Horan or whatever saying this about me. So it's not them. But just as an example, can you imagine if Tim Blanks started his own YouTube channel? Tim Blanks has been covering fashion since before I was born. I interviewed Tim Blanks when he wrote his Versace book about the book, and you guys can find that on the Thames and Hudson podcast platform. And he said that he's been to every single Donatella Versace show. Do you know how insane that is? Do you know how much knowledge Tim Blanks has? Like, if Tim Blanks started his personal YouTube channel where he just started analyzing fashion and like talking about his personal stories and giving the kind of context that me personally, I could never dream of giving that context because I'm not Tim Blanks. I'm not as experienced as Tim Blanks. I don't have the knowledge base that Tim Blanks does have. So it's crazy, and I'm just using Tim Blanks as an example, but a lot of these journalists that, you know, were saying this stuff, why don't they do that? It would actually be better for them, and they'll probably make more money too if they did that. And so I just think that sometimes a lot of people in fashion, they just like to hate on people because they can see that the power and their grasp on, you know, fashion media was waning, and therefore they just use it as a chance to hate on everything else that's alternative that they see. And it happens in droves. I remember when people were saying that the same thing about fashion bloggers, even fashion bloggers that literally had whole ass brands that were successful and stocked in the likes of Barney's, and they were journalists in their own rights and writing for big magazines, and then they decide to blog. Like, a good example of that is Diane Pernay. Diane Pernay had a very successful fashion brand. She was a journalist for some of the top magazines, especially in France. And she became a fashion blogger. And then when she became a fashion blogger and she made a shaded view of fashion, this is like fashion law, I'm going deep. But when she made a shaded view of fashion, people started to do that same thing. Oh, bloggers, you know, they're not serious, blah, 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 because these journalists could see that the power was waning from, you know, their hands. And they tried to lump Diane Pernay in that same group. Is exactly what they did with the YouTube thing. They're going to do the same thing with TikTokers, even people like Ryan Finn. And Ryan Finn is smarter than 95% of journalists I know that work in fashion right now at all the magazines. But they're going to do the same thing with Ryan Finn because they're so mad that they don't have the same grasp on the fashion zeitgeist that people like Ryan Finn do. So yeah, but anyway, let's continue the interview. Let me not go in too deep.
1,000%. And I think a lot of it also comes from almost like this element of insecurity, and fashion has always kind of rejected the new, or it's always been kind of slow to adapt, I've found, at least. Because like social media has been a thing for quite a long time. And when you look at like the old days of bloggers and when they started being taken seriously in the industry. That wasn't until like a couple of years ago, but they've been around since, I don't know, like 2010. I remember reading like Brian Boy's blog and following him and his journey, and it took years for him to be taken seriously within fashion. So I don't really understand why we're still repeating this like cycle, or we are not, clearly, because social media is the shit. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear on this, but I do think it's so important, and you're so right. Now everyone is looking to social media. Every single publication is taking social media super seriously, and that's kind of what made me shift from being an editor and writing, because I never actually intended to become a writer. It kind of just happened, fell into it. Was never my dream to just write. I've always enjoyed like the 360, the content creation perspective. So when I got the opportunity to do that, I was on it immediately. And my task was essentially to launch a TikTok channel for Highsnobiety, which is a publisher and it's a media company. And, you know, we do so many different things. And actually saying, oh yeah, let's do TikTok is so cool in a way, because I think we were also a bit earlier than a couple of brands, but for that to be taken seriously, like in a workplace especially, I think is great because it's so rare. And now we're in 2024, TikTok's been around for years. There's still so many brands that are not on TikTok. They don't understand the platform. Like I speak to people all the time and their response is like, oh, I'm not on TikTok. Like I don't want another social media. I will just get so distracted, or like all of these things. And I'm like, what do you mean? This is it. And I can imagine that's very similar for you.
Yeah, and it's like history repeats itself over again. So we had the bloggers who weren't taken seriously. They had to fight for their space in the industry. Then it was like the YouTube era, and we all had to fight. And then on TikTok, the same thing. And it's just at that point, this has happened how many times now? The writing is on the wall, but then the fashion industry is still slow to adapt and is still like, we don't understand TikTok. And now everyone's like scurrying and hustling, trying to understand and be involved. It's a bit strange that it has to happen that many times and people still don't, you know, understand it.
Yeah, and I also think
that just to touch on that fashion being slow to adapt thing, because I think, was it Day that said like, Day, you don't agree with the like fashion is slow to adapt. I think fashion is slow to adapt in the sense that they hop on things too late. Like brands hop on things way too late. So, for example, when TikTok was like blowing up and everyone was saying, like consultants and all the people that, you know what's going on, were saying brands should join TikTok. Like there's this thing happening on TikTok. Like brands should get involved. Brands should do this. Brands should do that. And all the brands were just like, nah, TikTok just looks like a place where like cringy kids dance, so it's not very luxe to be on that platform. But then a few brands did it and then they saw so much success, and then all the other brands were like, oh no, we need a TikTok. Look at what this brand did on TikTok, and then they all adapt. Like they never just do it or take the chance or take the risk when people like the consultants or, you know, the insiders are telling them, oh, this is the next big thing. They will wait until it's like they will wait until it's the most established thing in the world, and then they'll hop on it late and then see no benefit and then be like, see, this is why we didn't do it. It doesn't work. And that's been my experience consulting for a lot of fashion brands, or working under a lot of fashion brands. They will not do the things when they're supposed to do it. You'll tell them to do something, they'll do it a few months later when they've convinced themselves to do it, or they've seen everything work, which by the time everything has worked on a platform, it's probably too late to be joining it as a brand. And so that's what we mean when it's like slow to adapt in that sense. But you don't necessarily need social media to succeed as a brand, or you don't need these things. But if they're trying to use these things, then it's best to use it in a way where you're hopping onto things at the right time. You're immersing yourself into communities when you should be immersing yourselves, or in a way that it doesn't look like you're just leeching. You're actually part of the community. All these things. I think fashion struggles with this, or fashion brands struggle with these things.
The thing, you know, publications and brands are also looking for creators now to help them with the video content, to help them with this like Gen Z oriented content, because a lot of people in businesses are older. like they're millennials, they're 30 plus, they're not on TikTok consuming content in the same way that their target audiences would be per se. So they have to look elsewhere and they have to find these like cool TikTokers who are making content. And because you can blow up overnight. And with YouTube as well, they have no idea. So I think it's really cool to see now that that's being more integrated in like their workflow, and they're looking at incorporating that into their advertising, their communications. Like it is, because it is so important. Like everyone's on social media. And if we can, put all this money into producing a really glossy, nice campaign for a magazine, you will never be able to tell how many people saw your ad. You can look at how many people bought your magazine.
Right.
But if you go on YouTube, you can see how many people watched it, how long they watched it for, how many people comment, how many people like. Same on TikTok, like the insights are there, the research is there for you. So I think it's so interesting to see like it's slowly becoming a thing, but I think it's also scary for brands.
I think it's also difficult because it's this idea of building community. And I think a lot of, let's say, brands or magazines, they find it really difficult building those, because if you think...
Or before I make the point, I can't remember what point I made, but brands struggle so heavily with building a community, because I've noticed that it's kind of like corporate speak now. And it's not just in the fashion industry, it's every corporate company, I guess. They're all talking about, it's all about community building. I genuinely don't think any of them know what that means. I think they think that community building is having all these like wacky ass phrases that become catch terms for the brand, and then they have like, events every 3 months where they invite VIPs, and it's like, yeah, we're building an authentic community. Like, that is not how you build an authentic community. They just don't get it. And so it's funny when brands use that as a buzz term in fashion. It's like, we're just building communities and it's all about community building. And it's so funny. Exactly what Funny Bibs is saying, like knowing your core audience. And it's so funny.
You think about something like Vogue before the social media age. It's just the Vogue editors write what they write as fact, and that's it. And you just have to read it. You can't even comment anywhere. You can't give your opinion. If I make a video about a runway show, if people disagree, they'll let me know. People have their own conversations in the comment section, and I also learn a lot from them because I'm not in a bubble. There are people who comment who work in the industry too. Some people might even work for the brand. Some people might have even worked on that specific show.
Right.
And you get so much more context when you use social media platforms in a way that you didn't before the social media age. And it's also democratized fashion in a way that we hadn't seen before. There was a very singular perspective on fashion, but because of social media, you can talk to someone. Like, I started making content on my bed, literally, when I was in uni. Right. And you wouldn't have, someone who with no money and no connections talking about fashion on their bed and achieving any success if it wasn't for social media.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that idea of community is so important, I think, because like you say, so many people engage and interact, and they also find friends through social media, and they find the people, like-minded people. Because for me, growing up in Hong Kong, honestly, there wasn't a big fashion community whatsoever. And I was looking at kids in London, queuing up outside Supreme, like looking at YouTube and seeing this like whole community of people that became friends through fashion. And even then it was, like on Instagram, maybe it was like the glory age of fit pics. And I started posting on my Instagram, even though I had no friends that were doing it. I was like doing it on my work break and like got my colleagues to like take a little photo of me. And I was like so embarrassed. But I was also a kid. I was like 19 years old and the world was my oyster. And I think the confidence that you have at that age also, when you see other kids talking about what you like on the internet, I was like, I'm unstoppable. Like, I don't care what these people say that have like authority. Like, I've read magazines my whole life, and I've, studied Vogue and, done all these things. But once I realized that like, maybe that's not, you don't have to follow that 100%. Like, maybe you can form your own opinion. Maybe you can have discussions with your friends. That opened a whole new world. And that's because of social media. And I think so many people now also on TikTok is a great example. You watch a show like take the Margiela Couture show, I saw hundreds of videos on my TikTok and on my YouTube and on my Instagram of people just sharing their own opinions and their thoughts and questions around that show in a way that I don't see very often. And I feel like that's happening a lot more now on social media, that people are just like, yeah, I'll share my opinion. I have 30 followers, but like, who cares? Someone might see it, and you connect through that. I'm like, that sounds so deep, but it is really like that. You find your friends, you find your community.
It definitely is, and it's also very authentic, because let's say a lot of the industry, they're beholden to brands because those are their advertisers, those are the sponsors. So you actually cannot be critical about any of these brands. But on social media, you can. I can say, you know, the latest so-and-so brand show, I don't like it, and give loads of reasons, and it's not going to affect me in any way because they don't sponsor me in the first place, so they're not going to take money away from me. But you can't do that if you're a magazine and they're your advertisers, because there could be very serious repercussions to actually saying negative things. So that's another thing about social media, because before social media, fashion was kind of this utopia of just going by what fashion journalists say as Bible and as, you know, just what is fact.
Yeah.
Whereas now with social media, there are way more perspectives, and there's, I think, more of a critical eye on fashion that there wasn't before.
And so
Okay, and so my point on because I don't think many people are discerning to this fact that, and I don't want to mention names necessarily, you know, I don't want to mention names, but you have to look at who works with what brand, who is sponsored by what brands have paid this person, what brands pay this magazine, and then you have to go from there. Because sometimes, you know, people take all these opinions from someone who is literally on the payroll of a certain brand. And so there's a conflict of interest if they're analyzing a collection, but then this is the same brand that's like paying them loads of money. There's not really much to get from there, or it's very obvious that they can't say anything negative or they can't be critical in any way. So there's definitely going to be information that you can take from it, and valuable information that you can take from it sometimes, but you have to go into those situations with that understanding that that's kind of this situation that we're in, where I'm listening to someone analyzing a Chanel show who is on Chanel's payroll. Like, that's kind of how you have to look at it. I think a lot of people sometimes don't even consider these things when they read a magazine, or when they read a certain journalist's work, or when they look at a certain content creator and like the content they're making. So yeah.
So many more voices as well. Whereas I think before it used to always come from the same group or the same type of people. And I think now there's so much more like opinion and more life experiences that can like share their opinions, which I think is so important, because that really allows you to understand the 360 around like a fashion show, an article, a collection and whatnot. Because I think I learned so much, and I spend hours on social media because it's work, but also because it's like, I enjoy it. I do it in my free time. I do it for work. I'm on Twitter for hours a day, just looking at like random fashion threads. People post archive photos, and I'm learning so much every day just from these random people on the internet who don't even have like, I don't even know who they are. They just have like a little name, and I follow them for years, and they just post all this content, and I eat it up. I love it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think the same with YouTube as well. Like I spend hours just looking at things, listening to people, what they think. Even if I don't agree, I think just finding perspective is so fascinating.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think it's just very interesting that we've gone to, you know, social media people being at the front row, which is a big conversation now that people are having online. Whereas, like, should you give journalists who were the ones that covered these designers from...
Okay, so I didn't even realize that in this interview, I actually talked about that whole thing of, you know, journalists complaining. Obviously, I didn't go deep into it the way I did in the stream, where exactly what was said and all that sort of stuff. So I didn't actually realize that I actually talked about journalists not being happy with the fact that their seats are being taken by people with online platforms. But anyway, let's continue.
From the start, the front row, or should you give content creators because they have the vision and they get the eyeballs and stuff like that? And there's like this big fight between the old guard of fashion journalists and then the new school sort of like content creators turned journalists. And there's a lot of friction between it, which is kind of funny.
It is funny to watch. I think there has to be like a happy medium, because I do think obviously the people that have been working in the industry for a really, really long time have a lot of, you know, historical knowledge. They have been around for a while. They can reference old shows that they went to and whatnot. But I also understand that like the currency of today is virality. Like if you don't have the views, the right people forget about things, you know, like 24 hours after they've happened. And it's about like creating that viral moment on social media by like having the Kylie Jenners, the Kim Kardashians, you know, because you know that every magazine, not just fashion magazines, are going to cover it. So your brand is going to get this massive, massive exposure. And same with TikTokers, with YouTubers, with content creators. They have a massive following and a massive community that I think it really opens up your brand to like this whole new audience, especially of Gen Z consumers. Whereas I think, you know, the old school fashion journalists, like the publications, they still need to be in the space. They need to be able to see the collection, not being like in the fourth row, trying to like, oh, sorry, what was that shoe? And I know like from my personal experience, like going to shows to write about them versus doing content at shows, like I'm insufferable. I'm there and like my arm is up and I'm like I'm like, I need to get the content. And that just is the reality, and that's how it's changed. Because like you need to get those celebrity videos, you need to get like the cool street style shots. Like, and that's just how it's naturally evolved. I don't think it's good or bad. I just think that's like where it's gotten to now. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
What I will say is let me not freeze my frame with my face looking crazy like that. Yeah, we can pause it there. What I was going to say is I'm so happy that my content is not predicated on having to talk about a celebrity. Do I talk about celebrities sometimes? Yes. Will I talk about some of them in the future? Yes. But I don't know, like, having to film celebrities and just talk about and obsess over celebrities 24/7 constantly, I would hate for that to be my existence in general. So I'm quite happy that, you know, a lot of my content isn't predicated about that. I probably would make more money and I probably would be more famous and my platform would be a lot bigger if I did more of that, but that just isn't really me. And at the end of the day, like, you have to be authentic. People can see when you're being inauthentic. Like, people are not stupid.
Yeah, I think because some of my favorite journalists, like, I always want them to be in the front row and be able to see. So like people like, I don't know, Kathy Horan or Tim Blanks or Vanessa Friedman.
Totally.
Rachel Tastian, like these kind of people, amazing journalists, amazing writers. I hope they always have the front row because I always love to read everything that they write.
Exactly.
Like you said, it's kind of like a happy medium. It's kind of like a balance of both. Mm-hmm. You can get the traditional, like, old school journalists alongside the new TikTokers and YouTubers and stuff like that. And it's like a happy medium, sort of everyone wins.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the thing that
But now,
let me just not put my face crazy like that again. This is the thing that I don't understand, because like I just said, you can find, like, brands could find a happy medium with getting the best of the best writers like a Kathy Horan or a Tim Blanks, because genuinely there's so much to learn from what they say. So definitely put those in the front row and then mix it with, you know, super famous, high engagement TikTokers or whatever, content creators on Instagram who will push millions of impressions to these brands, and both of them are good for the business, in my opinion. And so there should be a happy medium. What I don't understand about the old school journalists and the old guard, going back to the dinner I had with a lot of these people, they're not trying to find a happy medium, and it's almost like they don't understand economics, in the fact that some of these journalists, no one is reading what you write, but the TikToker or the Instagrammer gets millions of impressions. So as a business, what do you think will bring more visibility to your brand? And then there's a different kind of visibility from a very well-respected journalist that people do read, like a Tim Blanks, which a lot of these journalists are nowhere near the level of someone like that, or a Kathy Horan or a Vanessa Friedman. And so I think there should be a happy medium. But I think a lot of these people that are just like, none of them should be there and all that stuff, I just think they have issues.
Now it just seems to be either or that brands do, which I think is what is creating the friction in the first place. It's just like, you guys aren't relevant, let's bring the TikTokers, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think it should be a mixture.
Totally. And I think the longevity is also different. Like, obviously the TikTok content is very current. It's very in the moment that people are going to see it. But, you know, an article can live on forever. People are going to reference that years from now. And I think maybe the solution is that we can all learn from each other. Because I also find a lot of the times, like, old school journalists also need to learn more about social media and its influence on fashion. Because I think you forget that there's this whole world of consumers that have no into fashion. They might just like clothes, and then one day they'll like see this cool video on TikTok of someone talking about this brand they've never heard of, and then it opens up this whole new world. So it's a very like nice entry level, whereas I think now a lot of content is behind paywalls, like it's not super accessible to especially young people, whereas, you know, social media is accessible, it's free, you can use it, and you can. My favorite thing is when people like screenshot articles and post them on Twitter for everyone.
Oh my God. So she just made a really good point. That is a big issue in fashion. The fact that a lot of content is behind a paywall. So, you know, the fact that, you know, with magazines, a lot of magazines actually, you have to get like 10 million subscriptions. You have to get the Women's Wear Daily subscription. You have to get the Financial Times subscription. You have to get the New York Times subscription. You have to get the Business of Fashion subscription. And by the end of it, like, you're basically broke. Like, you have all this information, but you're broke. So I think we need to find a medium with all of that stuff. Like Vogue Business, that's another subscription.
Everyone to read, because I'm like, yes, that's community.
I love it. It's kind of illegal, but no one actually gets into trouble for it. Yeah.
Because it's like, these are kids, like, having them pay a subscription, like, I get it, like, everyone has to make their money, but also, like, I don't know, I'm so torn. It's a tricky one, because I just think it should be accessible for everyone that wants to enjoy and consume fashion, because that's how I grew up. And like you say, like, reading all of these reviews and reading all of this writing from these amazing journalists, it sucks when that's behind a paywall.
Oh, you're completely right. I mean, some of my favorite books, I found like random PDFs of them online, and if I was to buy them, like the Raf Simons Redux book, I found some PDF like years ago and like read the book. But if you were to buy it, it costs like 400 euros.
Exactly.
I didn't have 400 euros to buy one book.
No.
So that's the thing, it's like, these things, even though once again, I don't know, like the copyright laws is not great.
I'm like, don't speak to me about that. I don't know.
But it's like that kids need to be able to access these things to really be engaged with these brands.
Yeah.
I think that's a big reason why I'm engaged with these brands, because I was able to find places I could read about these designers without a paywall. And it is kind of sad that money is a limiting factor for information for a lot of kids that are interested in fashion these days.
Totally.
So funny thing actually, because I basically exposed the fact that when I was getting into fashion when I was younger, I used to download PDFs of books instead of buying them. By the way, that's not illegal, by the way. Me downloading them is not the illegal thing, it's the distribution of them that is illegal. So I think someone in the comments said that, oh, you need to be careful by exposing yourself. Like, no one cares, trust me, nothing's going to happen. If I was, you know, distributing these things all over the place, then yes, it's different. But yeah, it's such a limiting factor, because as much as we say, you know, people need to do research and is the research accessible to these people, right? And so that's a big issue. That's even why, like, even when I do have a paywall, like Patreon, I'm not. I know some people whose Patreon is like $50. I know someone whose Patreon is even $100, which is to me insane. Like not affordable at all for most people. So I also try to make it affordable. Because yeah, it's tough. It's rough out here. It's not easy. And some of these subscriptions are mad expensive. Like, what was the website I wanted to join? There was a website, I think it was one of those like Financial Times or whatever. And I had just gotten so tired of like trying to bypass the paywall all the time. I was like, you know what? Let me just pay for it. Let me see how much it costs. And it costs so much money. I was like, wait, is this how much it actually costs for just one platform? And if I say I want to pay for every single platform this exact same way, I will literally be paying like $1,000 a year on subscriptions. That is wild. $1,000 a year is wild. Like, that is insanity.
Totally. And that's why I feel like it's so important, like you say, when these journalists realize that social media is a big thing. Like Vanessa Friedman's always posting live on Twitter from shows. And I think that's a really nice entry point for people to still experience and hear her opinion without being able to maybe read some of the articles. So you still get a chunk of it. But I don't know, like, I guess the monetization thing is also happening on social media with like Patreon and Twitch and whatnot. But I still feel like we haven't quite gotten there with fashion content. It's not really behind a paywall, so it is very like accessible on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram as well, obviously. But I guess also the money in social media is really crazy. So I can really imagine, like, if you're already a journalist and you're already writing, there's quite a lucrative...
Oh, I'm not there yet. I mean, people do make a lot of money on social media, to be fair. It really just depends on the views that you get and if you can use those views to get sponsorships. The people that get loads of views and also get really good sponsorships, yes, they make loads of money. Am I in that boat? No. Hopefully one day I'll be rich and I'll drive my Porsche 911. But yeah.
Industry to get into by, like, you know, TikTok pays you for views, so does YouTube. So like, how do you navigate that? That's like it's
kind of like a strange balance, because as a journalist, most journalists don't get paid great. But then you have expertise that would always work on social media if you know how to use it.
Exactly.
So that's the thing. It's like, if you have the expertise, you can always pivot to social media.
And vice versa, I guess, because obviously you were doing a lot of YouTube and now you do a lot of writing as well.
Yeah.
Was that always kind of the goal?
Yeah, that was definitely the goal. But once again, like I said earlier, I didn't really know how to get into the industry. So YouTube was my way to get into the industry. And since then, I've studied fashion journalism at CSM, worked for all different magazines. But I needed to take that route to actually be seen as someone that knows about fashion and knows what I'm talking about.
Right.
Which is kind of sad that I've had to like go all the way around just to get into the industry. I hope in the future that people with talent can just be seen for their talent and they don't have to break 5 million barriers just to get, you know, some room in the industry.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me add context to that opinion in terms of like me saying that there was no space for me in the fashion industry. So what I mean is, when at the time, like I've said a zillion times now, I was doing a lot of design roles. I did fashion internships. One of my internships, I was making patterns. My first internship, I was just doing everything. I was a fly on the wall. So my first internship, I hosted a show at the Saatchi Gallery for the brand, and then I would assist the creative director on doing lectures, because at the time she was a lecturer at RCA, the Royal College of Art. So some of the fashion students, I think they were doing their MA, they would come into our design studio and she would like give lectures in the design studio and show them different design techniques and things like that. And we also had a machinist who used to work at Balenciaga and then moved to our brand. And so I was learning a lot from this machinist. And so just learning all that stuff. And during that time, because I had the chance to do so many roles in fashion, from hosting shows to doing PR to literally handling emails to, making patterns to arranging patterns at first, all these kind of different roles. I started to, over time, try to think, if I had to stay in the fashion industry long term, what would I enjoy? What do I like the most? And over just loads of time of just thinking and thinking, I came to the, conclusion that I like talking about fashion and I like writing about fashion. And when I started to think about that, I was like, okay, how do I get into the industry? Obviously, the biggest magazine is British Vogue at the time. There were absolutely no people of color working at British Vogue. So I was like, well, that's not going to happen. And I remember other magazines that I thought were kind of cool and trendy and like unique at the time, like the likes of Dazed, ID. I would always like disturb editors and ask them, like, is there any opportunity for, me to write, or is there any opportunity, like, here's my writing, all that sort of stuff. And they just said no, which is fair enough. They didn't know who I was, whatever. I didn't have a strong portfolio. But at the end of the day, like, they should be looking at what I've written. And they're like, the vibe they gave me was like, we don't have any proof that you know anything about fashion. Like, who the hell are you? So even when I was making my YouTube channel, there was also like an air of, yes, that type of content didn't exist and I didn't know where it would go, but I also wanted to use it as a portfolio. So I'd have videos of me analyzing fashion and talking about fashion history, and then I could, show these editors, oh, this is actually some stuff I've done about fashion, blah, 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 blah. So that was part of the reason why I did it also. And let me tell you guys a funny story. The funniest thing, this is how unintelligent people in fashion are, or how people in fashion aren't actually good at their jobs. It's all about like branding and how you position yourself. Can you believe that some of the first articles I did for big fashion magazines were the same articles I wrote years before, because the topics were quite evergreen. There were the same articles I wrote 2 to 3 years before that moment that they rejected. The same exact editor rejected, because they were like, this writing is just not on the level of blah, blah, blah. I don't like it, blah, blah, blah. But now all of a sudden, because you're someone that is, doing interesting analysis of shows on YouTube and you're building a name for yourself, the exact same writing has gone from, it's not on the level, we don't like it, I don't understand it, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, it's magically good out of the sky by the same editor. That is like weird. And that's the weird thing about fashion. And that's why I say a lot of people in fashion are not fantastic at their jobs, because if you were good at your job and you genuinely thought it wasn't to the level, if I submitted the same thing, you'd be like, isn't this the same thing you submitted? And even if you don't remember that, it just shouldn't be on the level, right? Why is it good? Why is it bad one day and then good another day? So that's the thing about fashion. Sometimes it's all about how people perceive you. It's about how an editor perceives you. It's about how the CEO of a brand perceives you. It's about how the founders of these magazines perceive you, which determines what jobs you get, what roles you get, where you go. It's not actually about how actually good of a writer you are, which to me is mind-boggling. So yeah, funny story.
1,000%. And I think even if you do all the work, if you're young, people are still like, you got a lot to learn. Yeah. So I think even that's a barrier. Like you say, there's just so many things that you have to go through. And I think even when you work in the industry, I always feel I have the worst imposter syndrome, because I started when I was 18. And I think also people that are working in fashion are interested in social media. Like I know that I get a lot of my ideas from things I'm seeing on Twitter, on TikTok, on YouTube. Like I'll see someone be talking about something, and that will then go on to inspire this next piece that I'm working on. And I do think people are really starting to understand that, and they're starting to accept it as well, which I think is nice. Because again, we have a lot to learn from each other, and I hope that one day, I mean, my ideal scenario would be that all these fashion journalists that are writing could also deliver that in like a 30-second TikTok.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I still think that gap is still huge, and I don't think that's gonna like happen anytime soon. But at least the power of social media is definitely being recognized by a lot of brands, and because everyone's live streaming as well their shows, and I think so many people are tuning in because it is just more accessible, and that's how you find your audience, I guess.
Yeah, I do think there's still a few things that need to change because the industry, we still gatekeep a lot of things. Like something I always talk about is show notes. Immediately the show's over, why not just post the show notes to your page or whatever? And some brands do it. Rick Owens is known for doing that in the YouTube descriptions or all the show notes. But people actually want to learn about your brand. People are actually interested. And you're almost blocking people's interest into your own brand. You're kind of shooting yourself in the foot as a brand and not making things like show notes available, different information, different press releases. So I still think the industry needs to catch up. But I feel like we'll get there with time.
I hope.
Yeah, there's so many things that the industry needs to catch up on. Like going back to what I said earlier, where I was like, I don't think that these luxury brands, especially, a lot of brands talk about, or corporations, they talk about, oh, we need to build a community. It's the new thing now is about community building, blah, blah, blah. Part of community building is bringing, and that's why I say these people don't have a clue. They don't know what they're talking about. Part of community building is bringing people in, letting people in. Like, that's how you build the community. People feel like they're part of something. They feel like they're, involved in your brand in some way or another. So because all of these brands, their whole thing is about exclusivity. They're built on exclusivity. You can't really build a community around that. You can build a snobbish group of people, but you can't build a community. So when they try to pivot back and forth, it doesn't make sense. Like, even the show notes, most of the show notes for starters aren't even that insightful. You can't really learn anything valuable from them. But I just don't understand why brands gatekeep their own show notes. It makes no sense to me. It's literally stupid. It's like, people want to learn about your brand. People are actually interested. Any extra information you can give them about the brand, people will love it. And actually, people will be able to reference your work later. People have a better understanding of your work, which might give them a closer tie to that collection, which might mean they might buy it. And so that's what I mean by a lot of fashion is behind. There's just a lot of things that they don't understand, and they say that they're about community building and they know how to build communities and all these things. And then you look at their actions and the things that they actually do, and then you see that they don't know what they're talking about.
I hope so. I mean, I think like you say, there's a lot of work to be done there. But I think even with show notes and stuff, I think brands just maybe forget that there are so many people outside the people in that room that care and are fascinated, that are interested, that probably wouldn't be able to get into that room in a very long time, but would die to be there. Like very like Devil Wears Prada, like a million girls would kill for this job, like type mentality. But it is very much like, oh, and if you're a person on TikTok posting, you'll film your seat, here's what was happening, here's the invite, and people get that full experience because they wouldn't be going themselves. And I think that level of like relatability, and people get to experience it through someone's lens instead of just seeing, photos on Vogue runway, which is also amazing, but you get to see the full 360 around a show through social media. And even like the show notes thing is crazy. And I'm like, I want to see the set design. I want to see close-ups of the makeup. Like there's so many things and so much work that goes into a show, and even collections in general, that I just feel like we just get delivered a press release and images, and then that's kind of it.
Facts. We want to know these things. Who is the makeup artist? Like, what was their idea? What was the idea behind the makeup? What was the idea behind the hair? We want to know these things. Like, people are actually interested, Like, these brands act like no one cares. People actually care. It's so weird.
So the conversation that happens around it, I think actually maybe is almost more important than the actual just like, here, read the press release. Yeah. Which is kind of wild to think about. But social media does that work, basically. You don't even have to do much if you get the right people. But that's the thing, like if you get the right talent, if you find the cool fashion people online, send them the press release, like they just want to create content. They want to talk about it. They want to engage, and they're the ones with the most active communities that are going to comment. And you can learn so much from that as a brand, like see it as research almost, right? I don't know. It's crazy to think about. So what if you could, in a dream world, what are like the changes you're hoping to see in the next couple of years?
Oh, wow. Just the way brands adopt social media. So as someone that reviews shows online, something that I always struggle with is if I don't get to go to the showroom, I can't actually see the details on the back of clothes.
Sure, yeah.
Because when you watch a runway show on YouTube, it's just the front. When you look at Vogue runway images, it's just the front. When they do the detail shots, it's still just the front. So it's like the back doesn't exist of the clothes. So I always struggle with that because I'm always asking people, what did the back look like? People that went to the show, were there any interesting things? And it's almost like you don't see any of it online, which is kind of strange.
Yeah.
I don't know why, if we're going to see the front, why don't we see the back?
True.
So that's something that I hope definitely changes. I also hope that...
That's such a basic thing, by the way. And you have like, in these brands, they have heads of social media, heads of image, art directors. And for some reason, almost every runway show without fail, there's never a shot of the back of the garment. And the back of the garment is actually really important for a lot of designers because they've done different things. They've done different techniques. They've changed or made the back of the garment very interesting. And you miss all of that context because a lot of the runway shows just film the front of the body. There's no back perspective. Sometimes there is, but most of the time there isn't. And on Vogue Runway, it's very rare that on the detail shots you get to see the actual back of the garments also. So it's crazy. It's crazy that that's still not a thing. Like, we want to see all of the garment, not just one side of it.
You know, social media content creators are taken as seriously. I mean, the content creators I know are very educated about fashion. They have like whole libraries. I have my own library as well. And people like rent books from my library.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it's just this whole thing of you have to do it one way and that way is the only way. I hope it's something that changes, and I hope perspectives around that change.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's of like amazing importance. And I think in the world of editorial, I think people are really starting to catch on to like how important it is. So many magazines are thinking about social first ideas, really using like Instagram and TikTok primarily as ways of communicating to new audiences. Because I think especially with like streetwear, that started, you know, I want to say like 15 years ago, and the people that were 15 then are 30 now.
Right.
So it's also about like how do you capture today's 15-year-olds and how do you speak to them, not just like the audience that you've built and grown over the years. So I think that's also very interesting. And I do think that's like where these heritage magazines and titles are really going to have to put in the work, because Gen Z are spoiled for choice. There's so much content. And I think if you have a personality like yourself that you relate to and that you enjoy, you'd almost rather tune into your YouTube video than reading an article by someone that you have no context of who they are. And I do think we just need to start realizing that with younger people. Like, my sister is 19. She's probably never read anything I've ever written, but she watches my TikToks religiously. And she watches everything that I do on social media, reads the captions that I write, but she will never click into a link and read it. And I wrote something recently and I sent it to her and she read it and I was like, wow. She was like, that was so good, well researched, because she's now starting to get way more into fashion and is starting to read articles, to look into things. So I'm like, that is kind of the user behavior that is happening with social media. And I think, you know, brands, publications, anyone really should take advantage of that. Like, it's the entry point into this vast industry that's like $1 billion industry. But how do you what's the hook,
Right.
you know? And that is the videos, that is the content, that is the social media personalities like yourself. And I think they're the ones that are going to make the most change. Yeah, but I think in the next couple of years, like you say, there needs to be change there. And I'm actually really looking forward to these next couple of seasons, because I feel like now with Couture and the recent Marc Jacobs show, people are really excited about fashion again, and there are so many amazing conversations that are happening. So I'm hoping to see more of that on social media, and I'm hoping to see you in the front row very soon, in London, and Milan, Paris, all of the above.
Thank you. Likewise, I'm hoping to see you at the front row of all the shows.
I'll be
making great content.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really great speaking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your insight. I think you're amazing, and you're such an amazing force in fashion, and I can't wait to see what you do and what's next for your journey.
Okay, that was a really cool interview. It was really cool to watch that back, because I actually haven't watched it back fully since we recorded it so many months ago. So yeah, that was fun to watch. I think we recorded it at the start of this year, because all the episodes in the series were shot on the same day in the same studio, for people that don't know. So like, there was one episode I think with Martine Rose, because I remember when Martine Rose came. Really, really interesting episodes, actually, the whole season. Like, if you guys are interested, definitely watch season 5. And if you want to watch the interview back, it's in the description of the live stream. If you don't want to hear my annoying commentary over the interview, so be it. But yeah, it's very, very interesting where fashion is going, and, you know, how things are looking. Fashion is in a very, very interesting place, but I have a lot of hope for fashion. I definitely have a lot of hope. But on that note, thank you so much, guys, for watching the live stream. I shall be back very soon. I can't promise when. And I'll be seeing you guys a lot later. Before I go, though, if you want to join the Discord and chat with all of us after the stream, the link to the Discord chat is in the description. So yeah, definitely check that out, and I'll be back soon.